Hey everyone, it's Tim Holtz, Creative Director for Ranger, and I'm really excited to introduce the new Distress Grit Paste. Now, this stuff is really cool because it is a dimensional textural medium. Now, Distress Grit Paste is the same stuff that's in the Distress Paper Mosaic Kit, that little jar of grout, and I found myself using it on so many different things other than the kit that I needed it in a much bigger jar. So Grit Paste is available in this 4-ounce jar. It is a very kind of creamy viscosity textural medium, and I just want to show you how it goes on. So you're going to apply it. You can apply it through a stencil or however you wish. I'm going to work with a palette knife, and you can see that it's got a really great kind of a creamy texture to it. And I'm just going to apply it right through a stencil using a palette knife. Just going to spread it on. Now it does have a texture to it, and that's what's unique about working with this medium, that it can hold body. So if I kind of tap it, it can create peaks, or if I spread it out, you kind of hear it go through that stencil, it's going to provide that texture as well. And I love how smooth it goes on. And I'm just going to apply it. I also like the fact that because it has this texture, when I'm going through a stencil, I can kind of brush out the edges just to get those little rough edges on things. All right, so put the lid on this. All right, set this aside. Now when I go ahead and remove the stencil, lift that up, you can see the dimension that this gives, and you can also see that texture that's in there, that kind of really nice lumpy nuggety texture, and it's going to dry that way. So let's talk about drying time. So drying time for Distress Grit Paste, you need to let it air dry. You cannot apply heat to this medium at all, just like the Mosaic grout. You can't heat this, you have to let it air dry. Now if you're in a rush, you can use cool air with a fan. That will dry this much quicker. So cool air is really about the only thing that you can do to dry this stuff quickly. Now, once it is dry, we've got a really cool textured surface. So drying time. If it's under a fan, I would say you could probably dry it in about 5 to 10 minutes with some cool air. Of course, if you apply it thicker, it will take a little bit longer. If you let it air dry, it really depends on the weather. Is it humid or dry or anything like that? But once it is dry, you can see it's got that great texture on the surface. Let's talk about how we can alter this texture. We can alter it, of course, with different distress mediums. It is distressable. So I'll talk with this light color. We're going to work with our ink pad. Now, this is Mermaid Lagoon, and I'm applying it with a blending tool just so you can see how the paper is really absorbing that color, but so is the grit paste. Now, when this paste takes the color, it's only going to take a very light amount. It's almost like a light tinting. So if you just want it lightly tinted, then a distress ink pad and a blending tool is the way to go. Of course, if you want more color saturation, you can go in with a fluid ink like a spray stain or the regular stain. And when this goes onto that grit paste, I'll just kind of mist that on there, you can see that the color starts to get absorbed into the grit paste. So it's going to take on more color. Now keep in mind, this is still going to dry lighter than that wet stain. Stain always dries a little bit lighter than when you first put it on. But this saturation will be more than the ink pad. The ink pad is the lightest tinting. This is more color. Of course, if you're going for something more opaque in your mixed media work, you can work with paint. Now we can work with distress paint or really any kind of paint on there. And we can apply it with the dabber or a brush, but because, I don't know if you can hear that, kind of hear that grit texture, I just like to apply the paint just using my finger, because I can work that into the texture of the grit paste. And I really like that. And of course, the paint is going to apply a very opaque layer unless I diluted it in water. But you can see there the paint that's on there. All right, now another medium we can work with, let me just go ahead and clean off my finger real quick, is Distress Crayon. Distress Crayon, also a pigment, which means it's going to provide an opaque layer. Get a little bit more crayon on there. So this was just a manila tag. It was not coated, so if I'm going to smudge the crayon, I need to work rather quickly before the crayon dries, but it does give me the ability to smudge out that pigment. And what you'll notice about the Distress Crayon is because it is so highly pigmented, it really gets absorbed into that grit paste, creating a much darker color. But I love the fact that I can just take my finger and smudge out that crayon. Distress crayons are a really cool medium to work with. Whether you're working on coated or uncoated paper, it's just about how quick you go in and blend that out. But there we have the Distress crayon. So you can see when we're working with this new Distress Grit Paste, we have a really cool gritty texture, but it is designed to take distress mediums, whether working with ink, stain, paint, or distress crayon. So have fun adding this new mix to your mixed media projects.